Hello and welcome to the Smarter Food Supply Chain webinar series. I'm Mike Ellen and I serve AIM as their Member Engagement Manager. AIM North America is an alliance enabling the cooperation, development, standardization of AIDC technologies. From barcodes to RFID to IoT, AIM North America is your advocate. Any organization with an interest in data collection is a beneficiary of these efforts. Membership provides an opportunity to influence the direction of the industry, develop policies and standards, access market reports, and engage new partners. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I would like to go over. First is our antitrust policy. It's the policy of AIM Inc. to conduct its operations in strict compliance with the antitrust laws. No AIM activity shall create even the appearance of a violation of the letter or spirit of the antitrust laws. We also have our collaboration and work product policy. AIM committee meetings and presentations are held for the primary purpose of advancements in our industry, which necessarily involves development of work product intended solely for the public domain. AIM's developed this policy for the protection of its members who engage in this important collaborative effort. A few more housekeeping notes. You are muted throughout the presentation. If you have any questions you would like answered by Terry, please send those to AIM via the chat dialog box located at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer as many questions as possible at the conclusion of the presentation. Also, this presentation will be recorded and you will be notified via email when the recording is available. Today, I am here with Terry Myers, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Infratab and is responsible for overall company operations with a special focus on company, marketing, and product strategy. Terry will be discussing approaches to ensure the safety of e-commerce in the food supply chain. Welcome, Terry.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. You know, when I agreed to do this seminar, there was no such thing as coronavirus. And I thought, oh, I know a whole lot about this e-commerce because we were doing a project with a supermarket and doing tagging of meals ready to eat. And so I thought, oh, this will be a great thing. I can't tell you as I prepared this presentation how much I had changed in my mind and how things are so different and how e-commerce is now so much on the top of probably all of our minds. With that, my first slide is a changing world. And I guess we all know that in 2020, the food delivery has changed dramatically. But so did food preparation. I think we're all experiencing now getting food prepared out and having it delivered to us. But these changes come with a challenge that may be very, very beneficial as we go forward. It's as if the animals told us to stop what we're doing and think about safer, more sustainable, fresher things. And so we have that, but the supply chain is changing because now individuals are included into that food supply chain. And the food safety includes them as to what we do and how we trust and how that food has been cared for. And I think the issue is how that food has been cared for. My agenda today is really, I started, and when I did it, I had pictures of what we did when we were tagging fish, and I realized that our food supply chain has just gotten a lot different. There's Uber. I did a Dreams time getting pictures for this and saw carts in New York that were being pulled, sitting on the side, and then I, of course, had the home video, but then there were pictures and pictures of delivery men carrying food containers on their back, waiting in line to pick up food. And so that's just a little indication of what's been changing. I'm going to start by doing a recap of e-commerce today, and then I want to address a little bit about what the FDA is expecting in their e-commerce initiative, and then we'll go on from there. E-commerce today. We're buying our food right now from Vaughn's, and we're in California, and so we have a truck that comes to us just like this Fresh Direct truck. It's in the picture. It has temperature-controlled departments. It has a frozen department. It has a shelf-life department, and it really takes care of it. We also buy our food from a regular market and have somebody pick up the food and deliver it in their car. But what I saw when I was looking at all of the pictures, I saw an awful lot of robots. I saw a lot of drones. And I realized that for e-commerce, that drones and robots, especially in today's world, were also of interest and have to be a part of the food safety and the smarter food safety. The initiative, as you'll see a little bit later, is really directed toward meal kit subscriptions ordered online and delivered. When I first signed up, I thought that's fine because we're working with the supermarket, and that seemed quite interesting because it was controlled. It was part of the supermarket, was part of the global supply chain, and they were just extending their business and their delivery services. But in these last 2 weeks, as we've been locked down, we've been buying from local companies that are doing prepared meals. And so now we have smaller companies, not GS1 aware, offering those services as well. And then, of course, we're doing a lot of Uber Eats, a lot of Grub Hubs. But added to that e-commerce are the grocery perishable leftovers at the supermarkets, whether they're sold to businesses or whether they're given to the food banks. And, of course, we've been watching on television the food bank in Pittsburgh, with it being bereft of food. So there's issues there as well. The risks are quite all the same when you look at it. Food pickup areas are not always temperature controlled. Delivery delays, the drivers don't always pick up or pack or transport at their own time, and their deliveries are not temperature controlled. The doorstep deliveries, when they deliver, they sometimes leave it, and you don't know how long it's been there. And food recalls. Now the question is, who's responsible? We know, and we could trust the recalls when the product was delivered to Walmart or delivered to Vons, and they were concerned with the batch lot, and they were concerned with looking and checking if it was a recall. But there's one more thing, too, which the screen points out, and that is contamination. Who touched, and then what shall I do? How do I handle this new food that came in? And the risks are quite severe to us, especially now, and it's really because anyone who handles the product really doesn't know how to translate temperature changes over a period of time into the freshness or shelf life used and left. If you did, and you also knew how it was handled, who handled it, and whether it was conforming to some of the safety standards, you'd feel a lot more comfortable. Next, Mike. As I said, there are rewards too, and those rewards come in that I don't know whether you are doing it, but we went out and we planted a garden. One of the first things we did was say we wanted to grow our own food. And in looking at the pictures, I saw an awful lot of vertical farms. And I realized that there's going to be rooftop farms, there's going to be backyard farms, community gardens, and there's going to be an overabundance, needs to be traded, needs to be sold, needs to be handled. Also with e-commerce, there's now going to be a lot of smaller companies, restaurants that are going to be needing food and working with food. So we're going to have a small business entry into the e-commerce food supply. But all of them are going to be wondering and needing consultants who understand the condition and the shelf life of products to help them through this. This is the FDA initiative, and I'm not going to pause on this page because I'm going to go to the next one where I answered some of the questions. The first thing they asked was, how can we, as food safety regulators, bring tools to bear that won't need to be updated every 2 years? My answer, no way. There are so many innovations going on in food safety and in food, in the supply chain, that to not have anything that needs changed in the next 2 years is not even possible. And all those innovations are coming in what was now called smarter, just what they said. And so and that we don't have to worry about. Their second question was they want to add to the food code or issue guidance for industry regarding the handling, packaging, transportation, particularly focused on more mail-order meal kits. And that's what I know best. And we're very GS1 savvy. And so with a little tweaking, the familiar GS1 guidelines we're using for produce and for fish, plus the barcodes, plus smart sensors, and condition-savvy business data will allow that guidance to occur. And I think it'll be fairly simple, and I think it will be very productive. The last is the incentive to use the technology that automatically monitors product time and temperature, tamper-resistant traceability information. And that's what we do. So my answer is the ROI is compelling, whether you're a large company with fast-moving consumer goods that you're selling to through the grocery store, or whether you're small. And the implementation can be simple, and we've been doing it, and so we know that it can be simple. So I leave this slide by saying that there is gold in your supply chain, both traditional and e-commerce. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you some of a map to see how you can find it. So let's get started. I realized when I was writing this that I had not read or I had not listened to the other Smarter Food presentations. So I went and I listened to the three that were on the left of this slide, and I loved them. And I thought that they had addressed the issues that I was going to address on GS1 and identification and item attributes, and they did a good job. So I reference it if you are not familiar with GS1. If you need more information about barcoding and the transition of where it's going, I really suggest that you listen to the three videos or look at the three videos, and it'd be worth your while. So I'm going to start with the assumption that I don't have to talk about GS1, other than the fact that we have been GS1 savvy for years since we started. We do tagging of perishable tagging of food in the supply chain, and our tags have an EPC number in it. Our data has a lot of GS1 attributes, although we have found that GS1 is not everywhere. Our flower farmers here in Oxnard are not GS1 users or members, and so we had to account for and support those who weren't GS1. But no matter what, the concepts that GS1 has and has had over the last years is everything that we buy into, everything we try to collect our data on, and it goes to item identification and tracking, what, where, when, and why. At Quarterdeck, wrong company, at Infratab, we add how is it. And as you think about what is smarter, smarter is a simple progression. What happened with GS1 is they had an ID on the barcodes. They added attributes. They added attributes for batch slot, for production date, and for things about the product, so that you could get an idea and actually start to, if you're measuring in real time, get a pseudo digital twin that you hear about in industry. We are currently in the third step, or this third phase, and that's that RFID now has temperature monitoring and alerts in it. And that's one of the features we do, but that is not something that I would say is smarter. That's the same as using a temperature logger that's been around since the 60s. So although it's good, it doesn't say, you can't stop there to say that's what smarter food safety is. But the fourth one is, and it is when you add real-time condition, meaning shelf life monitoring, or freshness monitoring, and with that predictive analytics blockchain documents for the supply chain segments. At that point, you're actually tracking from the time a product is born, which we call make, through store, through transport, to distribution, to retail, to service and use. And that coupled with knowing where it is, knowing when it got there, knowing what happened and why it was there, and then knowing how is, and then attaching attributes to it to be able to understand things that you're interested in and want insights in, you have a very, very, very interesting collection of data that helps you in decision making. And it is that I think is what smarter means. What's important is that when I say that tagging and adding e-commerce into the e-commerce supply chain, and it's simple, it's because each one of these steps is an add-on from the last step. So your processes are in place, and you're adding on and collecting more data, but if you do it from a very measured point of view, you're not disrupting your processes. And you get a lot without having to do much changes of anything. What is smarter? In Perishable, smarter is one more thing, and that is that smarter is also a live date. When we started Infratab, it was about adding a little live date that would tell you whether your product was okay, and we envisioned that it was going to be on milk, and we're still not there, but we're getting closer. And it's about knowing just how fresh something is. And the reason was because the expiration date labels, or now the best if used by dates, are a guess. They're a guess by the brand owner based upon the spoilage characteristics of the brand item, but it is also a guess because they're estimating the temperature to be experienced in the supply chain from transport through to use or eating. And that often doesn't work, and so you have sometimes the date works, sometimes it's too late, and sometimes it's too early. What was interesting when I looked on the FDA website, looked at their documents on date labels, I saw something very interesting. It said between the food industry and consumers, Americans are throwing out about 1/3 of the food, 161. I've known that. We all say that. We all say, 33%. But imagine this. You go to your favorite supermarket, come out with 3 bags full of groceries. Before you get in your car, you toss one of those bags in the garbage. Sound ridiculous? Of course it does. But that's effectively what's happening. And that's what live dating in conjunction with temperature monitoring can help you avoid. What also is very smarter, makes things smarter, is that we're finding that as we follow Industry 4.0, which is the initiative for machines in automobiles for making cars and machines smarter, is that we've been doing all the things they've been saying for a very long time. And that those innovations that they're doing and reaping such rewards are absolutely pertinent to the supply chain. And they include real-time business step tracking, predictive analytics, audio-visual associations, blockchain, multiple RFs, which we'll go into a little bit later, and group missions. And what I mean by group missions is you're tagging a group of tags together on a mission where you're looking at some of the tags are monitoring the trip, some of the tags are monitoring the space around the items, in the truck maybe, and some are monitoring the products. And with that, you have a cohesive group that you're gathering information, and it's very, very interesting. What's important to us and what is smarter to us at Infratab is that smarter is data-centric. It's simple for users, but powerful for analysts. We have focused on shelf life since we started. That's why we started Infratab. And what we know is that when you can quantify freshness and you can trust a freshness number, you can monetize freshness. And that is a concept that people can't quite believe, but it works. Our concept is fresh time points, and the concept is very simple. A perishable's life starts at 100 and ends at 0, and that 0 is the best if used by, quality end of life. And with that, we can plan and we can map out what your supply chain looks like right now. And with our tags, you can set alerts that are actuals when they occur, and you can compare with this plan and you have budget versus actual. And what it does is it gives you an insight not only in how much shelf life is left, but how much shelf life is used. In conjunction with that, we are very heavily into business data dictionaries. They're a variant of the GS1 core and EPC Global core business vocabularies. There, because we focused a lot on perishables. And so with that verse of the business data dictionaries and the plans and other analytics that we have and metrics we have, give you something that gives you data for you to answer your insights and to monitor and scorecard your truck drivers or your delivery guys or whatever. Our toolbox, and I thought, you know, what it is, how does somebody figure out how to use these tools for the e-commerce? And the answer is, first, you have to know what the tools are. Well, our tools, and it would be all tools, would consist of tags that are smart, would consist of edge readers, and would consist of dashboards, and would consist of the cloud. And a lot of what we do associates ID barcodes and EPC ID tags with our tags, getting the information that's for the Produce Tracing Initiative in conjunction with that off the barcode, and then being able to put it into our database. With that, our particular sensors are RAIN and NFC. And we do that because we want to have an item identifier. And that is absolutely critical that we have an item identifier and be able to be used within the supply chain. But NFC is equally important because when you're in the supply chain, unlike being in industry, everything moves. An item never stays still. It starts at a small farm, it goes to the field receiving, it gets into the pre-cooler, and then it goes for 4 or 5 different places when it goes through customs and when it gets to a freight forwarder, and everybody is different. Some don't speak English, some can't read, some don't, even when they have a phone, some phones don't have NFC, and your issue is that you don't know whether there's a connection, you don't know who the person is, and you have to be able to support that. And so we went to NFC thinking that this was perfect. We ended up in Kenya and found out that there were no NFC phones in Kenya, so we added a barcode to the end of the outside of our tag so that you could get the information. But it's this moving thing that is the challenge. But with that, when you're able to read the barcode and tie it into your tag, you get fantastic information. Now, we have lately been able to add additional RFs to our tag. And we do that because, again, we want to have the EPC, and those other RFs are Bluetooth low energy, as well as LoRa and Sigfox for low power WAN. Each one of them has a different purpose and a different reason why you'd want it. LPWAN and LoRa can go 3 or 4 miles so that you can not have to have so many. You don't have to have, you can get the distance. Low power Bluetooth is great for the warehouse. And so there's a conjunction of things. So with our tags and where we're going is being able to connect a third RF and be able to use it for a particular segment, then pull it off and give it back to the transporter, whoever has it. So we experiment. These are all experimental right now. The NFC we've been using forever, and we don't want the NFC without it because there's no EPC. But without it, we couldn't exist in the supply chain. What else is in our toolbox, and which should be probably in everybody's toolbox, is the events. Events are the core business vocabulary of GS1, which associate with every tag read or every transaction read, a business step, a business location, and a read point so that we know where and when something was. The others that was core to us in our toolbooks is that everything we do is based upon a mission, and the tag has a mission, and therefore it has a start and an end, and we're tracking the data as it goes in. We're tracking it all by a linear line until the tag is taken off and decommissioned, and that turns out to be just absolutely critical. Some of the things are also very standard, locating, knowing where where the location is, but we also have another thing in our toolbox, and that's called inherit. And inherit lets you take data and sensor data from one tag and put it into the memory of an EPC ID tag, or put it into another sensor tag, or to actually even print a barcode label, or a color label. And that has its advantages. We also have a feature called inference, which allows you to monitor or to calculate and estimate shelf life when something is in a monitor environment, leaves, and then comes back. And so these tools all have different purposes that we've encountered, but that toolbox is there. The other thing that we differentiate is between standard sensing that you do for temperature logging and for transport and condition. And that means that everybody is compliant, and we believe that that's the thinking. So when we think about condition intelligence, or what we call it, we're thinking of it as an add-on to basic sensing. And if somebody doesn't want to use condition, it doesn't matter. They use it as a temperature log, but if they want to experiment, they do it. And so that's our toolbox, and that's a toolbox that we think is there. I stop here because I thought there are a lot of situations that we have for monitoring things going from the fish, from the harvesting of fish through the supermarket, and from the supermarket to the consumer. But where we have not done is we have not done the meals, the meal prep to the small, from the small person to the consumer. And I thought that was probably a subject of conversation as to whether we all thought that was viable and how we could figure out how we could include those individuals into the supply chain and make sure that we felt safe and that we felt that the product had been cared for. And so that's the end of my presentation.
All right, Terry, thank you so much for that presentation and your insights today. Once again, I want to remind everyone here that logged in, we will be sending out this recording here in the next few days if you missed a part of it at the very beginning. Terry, you ready for some questions?
I sure am.
Okay, great. First question we have is the FDA's Smarter Food Safety for E-commerce is focusing first on meal kits. Do you think the companies would be able to follow GS1 traceability guidelines, or should the focus be just on facility cleanliness and safety compliance?
Well, it's a good question because you'd like them to be, and you'd like to be trying. One of the things with the FDA is they're saying, you know, sign up some people and try it. I think that they need to be looking at large companies as well as small and get the feedback so that we have it, because I know all of us, as we sit here under this lockdown situation and we get the food in and we wonder what to do, is we're going to really want them to do that. And I think the restaurants and these companies are going to want to be trusted. And so I think we're in a different era, and I think that it is worth a try, and I would bet that there are some small companies that will try it, and it depends upon how hard it is for them to do. Whether it can all be done with a cell phone and whether it can only be done by reading a barcode and then reading another tag and seeing it. But it's worth a try because I think we need to get everybody back into the supply chain.
Okay, great. Another question involving the meal kits. How would a meal kit company know what food to monitor? Would they have to monitor every food, or could they monitor just one?
It's a good question. What we usually do, and we use examples of a bouquet of flowers, you pick the one that's the most sensitive. But in our supermarket blockchain project in Greece, we were working with a very esteemed, where we were working with the National Technology Institute of Athens, who are very adept and very savvy on fish. And so they were giving guidance as to how to do a shelf life. But we're thinking that what we have to do is have little teaching seminars as to how people would begin to think and get their hands around doing it. It's quite simple to start, but it does require that you think about the shelf life of a product. What we would think about for the meal kits would be to use an expert to give them guidance and then do it. But you don't have to do it on everything. You do it on what's the most sensitive, and you do it only when it's sensitive. You'd probably always want to do it on fish.
And why is using temperature threshold alerts just as good as monitoring condition?
Well, temperature alerts and temperature logging have tell you what happened and tell you that it wasn't your responsibility. But it doesn't tell you very much about the product itself and what to do if it's been out and exposed, whether you should throw it away or not. So in today's world where you're looking for trust and you're looking for caring, you're looking for taking the opportunity to be able to get your hands around it and be able to understand the shelf life, understand how good it is, and understand one of the things that happens is when you don't know shelf life, a shipload can get rejected because it's over a threshold for a little bit, when actually the shelf life tells you that it was just fine. In our fish project in Greece, the supermarket was so concentrated on the quality of their food that as we worked with them and as we tested the fish that was going through the supermarket to the consumer, they were throwing away more fish than they had to because they wanted to make sure that the fish wasn't any good. It was so admirable. It was like, oh my God, this is just a wonderful company. They're doing it the opposite of what you would think, you know. That the reason they're doing it is to make sure that they are as fresh as they can be. And I think that in a day where there is 30% of the food tossed, we need to be able to reduce that. We need to be able to reduce that by getting that either to the food banks or by having a marketplace where the business-to-business, small businesses can buy the food and know that they're going to use it today or tomorrow. And so they can buy the things that are being somewhat tossed, and they know that they're going to use it. I also think that what we are experimenting with is flavor bands. In flavor bands, we're finding that people like food at different freshness levels. Some like it almost gone. Some like it really fresh. Depending upon the recipe, you might want it so that it's, you know, almost close to being when you toss it. And so the thinking is that you need to be able to get a headset together so that you can use all of the food that is now, you know, about to be thrown away. And it's really critical.
Okay, great. We have a few more questions as well. What is the most positive step you have seen toward full supply chain transparency?
I think the grease. The other is the flours. Flours is very easy for full supply chain transparency, especially if you're in Holland or the Netherlands. But the reason for that is because it's easy to identify a flour and know how many base days are left. And what you're really concerned with is, I want 7 base days. And so in order to do that with flours, especially in the Netherlands, is you're looking at that quality of the flour, the stems, how many buds are on it, and so they're very eager to be collecting the data so that they can differentiate their flour from someone else. So flours is important. I think the worst is fish because of so much counterfeiting of fish, and so that's why I said that you'd be wanting to focus on fish, and so I think that's the other end of the scale.
And what data carrier do you use most?
Data carrier?
Yes.
What's the data? What's the data? Is that a barcode? Is that what you're saying? I don't know what a data carrier is. A data carrier in my mind is a barcode or an EPC ID or our tags, which are an EPC ID with a sensor. And so, of course, the one we use most is the EPC ID with a sensor. Projects we have now is we are going with an EPC ID tag that is both EPC RAIN and NFC. And we are doing everything with the dual. Although we live with the other, and we live with barcodes. We do an awful lot of association of barcodes with our tags. We also do a lot of associations of pictures with barcodes and our tags.
Okay, great. Another question we have is, do you have on-site printable tags with a thermal printer or an encoder?
Yeah, we do. We like to use converters, but yes, we do. We also have printers that actually print our circuits for our sensor tags. Because everything we're doing is going to be able to print. Everything we want is printable tags. But yeah, no, we do.
And in the current environment, what is the biggest challenge you see?
The biggest challenge is the, in some ways, I hear success, but there's another one, and that is the headset change to be able to think about shelf life. It's widely embraced by companies and individuals who are concerned with quality. Those companies that are not concerned with quality hate our products. And because they don't want to reveal what their products are. So it's revealing, but it also is disappointing. And so there needs to be a way. Now, we work with them and we give such good data that those who like quality and those who like data love our products.
And our last question here today, what kind of e-commerce regulatory framework would you like to see be available in order to help your business or your clients?
I don't know, because I'm not really, I'm not one to have a lot of regulatory. I think the GS1 guidelines that are there for traceability are great. And I worry about these small companies because in some of the farmers that we deal with here, and we're in Southern California, they're using an outside computer service, and they have absolutely no computer skills. And so you wonder how they ever were going to grow into this next generation. And so it needs to be simple. It needs to grow. There needs to be someone to help them. We envision, we have a program that we're creating right now called Jumpstart, where Jumpstart would include people who would go out and help them set up, and so they don't have to worry about anything. They need to be thinking this way, but they're not equipped to think this way yet.
Okay, great. Well, Terry, thank you so much for your time and your insights today. Really appreciate it.
Good. Thank you.
All right, and thank you again to our audience for their active participation today. Have a great rest of your day.